Anyway, today I'm going to tackle the electrical system, which is that big mess over there. I've not decided on what electrical switchboard to use yet. I don't know if I need a 6 or 8 position, so today I'm just going to start snipping zip ties and tracing wires and labeling and all that kind of stuff to kind of figure out what I need and so on and so forth. The big question I haven't been able to find is, do you have to run your running lights at the front of the boat and your anchor light in the back on separate switches, or can it be as one? I think I'm probably answering my own question. I think the anchor light's on whenever you're sitting and your running lights are on when you're running, but I don't know if that's a Coast Guard rule or not, because that means the difference between either one switch or 2 switches. So someone might be able to answer that question for me. But anyway, today I'm going to use my trusty tools, which is my Rhino 5200 label maker. This is what we use in my job, which is home theater and stuff like that, to label our wires nice and neatly. And of course, cuts to cut your zip ties and so on and so forth. And then this nifty little thing is called a tone generator. And what it does is it emits a tone that this thing picks up. And the further you get away from it, the quieter it is. The closer you get, it makes a bigger noise. So I'm going to use that to kind of trace down some wires, because I think that there's a bunch of wires that have the same color coding. This also has another nifty feature called the continuity, which you get the tone and the continuity. This, whenever you touch the 2 leads together here, it makes that light come on. So that way I can, between the tone and the continuity, I can be able to trace the wires down. Now in a car that works a whole lot better, because the whole chassis is a chassis ground, whereas here I'm going to have to run a long wire back up to the front to the ground to be able, or to one of the leads, to be able to find out if that's the same wire. Well, I'm about 3 hours in, and I've made tremendous amounts of progress. This is not nearly as bad as I thought, although it still had quite a few things that I don't know if it was from the factory that was jury rigged like this or not, but I've pulled out several wires that just kind of went to nowhere. They were just kind of cut off, and then also on some of the Molex plugs, they had a wire going in one side, but there's nothing coming out the other side. So I think they kind of make these generic so they can stick them into a bunch of boats. The bad thing about this one is there is all kinds of like little luxury items that are on it that are just absolutely kind of throwing me for a loop. Like trying to trace all the little light wires and stuff like that, and they made it impossible for you to change any of the light bulbs in here. These are all behind here. They're hot glued in. So if a light bulb burns out, guess what? You're screwed. But I've been labeling everything as I've been going. I've got my 12 volt switched. I've got standard 12 volt constant. So that way I can operate different things. I've got your ignition and so on and so forth. So it's moving right along. Should be able to get this all back together fairly easily, but I just got to finish tracing all the wires and making sure all the zip ties were just brittle. You could just snap them and they would break right off, so I'm replacing all the zip ties. And I'm checking, I've found that a lot of these little screws on the back of these gauges are loose. So I'm going to go back with my little socket wrench and just give them a tighten up, make sure it's all good to go. And it's been many a year since I've messed around with 12 volts, so this has kind of been an educating experience. Plus, been finding out how this the trim works, coming from the little switch right here. That's all that this boat has to raise and lower the engine, and it basically has a little 12 volt coming in, and then it has an up and down, so it just routes it back and it hits the solenoids. Hope that's okay. It worked perfectly for me last year, but I mean, there's no trailer button or anything like that like I'm accustomed to. It's just simply up and down here, real basic. Oh boy, wire everywhere. All right, a little bit of update. If you've maybe been following the thread or my progress, you're going to be asking about this thing. Kind of looks like a heat sink or an amplifier or something like that. Well, after tracing it all the way back, it goes through this, comes up and goes in. All these wires go to the fuel gauge, which is right here. So, and then this little stripy wire, this one goes up and over and then comes out right here, and then goes up to right here, which, I don't know if you can see that or not, it says fuel. I guess that's to tell me my fuel is low. So I don't know what that thing has to do with the fuel. But if anybody can explain that, that would be great. I don't know if it's just some type of, I don't know, resistor, maybe, to provide power for the fuel gauge, or the fuel something or other. But anyway, one of the red wires, or pink in this, goes to where all the power ties in. It seems like that all the power loops from each gauge. Same thing, all the gray wires like this are the grounds. And then so one pink wire goes to this side, and then one pink wire goes to this side. So really have no clue about where that goes. I'm going to keep tracing though. If anybody knows what this is for, let me know. Oh, I got goodies today. Went to West Marine and got my distribution panel for the fuses and to control everything. This was $39 at West Marine versus the Blue Sea system, which I've been looking at, that was like $157. And the only difference I could find was the fact is that the Blue Sea system had waterproof switches. That is it. Now, the one drawback to this is that the labels are not changeable. Well, I fixed that by getting a label kit. And they are the exact width of the existing ones there. So it'll work out perfectly. I also got a push button for my horn. I got tired of reaching down to the old fuse panel to turn on make the horn blast. So I just got a push button horn that's going to go up on the dashboard. I also got a fuse for that horn, along with a 10 amp fuse that goes in inline fuse holder. I got me a 20 amp circuit breaker. This is for the ignition. This is whenever you turn the ignition on, it actually provides power for the gauges, and also sends power back to the coil to tell it it's okay to come on. Also got these. I'm going to put these underneath the gunnels. Blue. Because the boat is blue. And so I wanted some, I guess you'd say, you know, the ambient light to come down underneath the gunnels on either side to kind of get it. So I got two for each side, and they're 12 volt. Now here's a little shopping tip. These exact ones, they're not labeled the exact same, but they're repackaged in a West Marine badge at West Marine. One of these was $17. I got this two in a package for $14.99 at AutoZone. So I was able to get two for less than what I was going to pay for just, or actually get four for what I was going to pay for singles. And there was no difference whatsoever. It read the exact same way. It had a very similar packaging. It just didn't say the Pilot, it said West Marine. Alright, you might be wondering why it's black. There's no screen, no lights. Wait for it. Wait for it. We have lights. I put two LEDs under each gunnel on each side and ran all the wires to it. Worked beautifully. So now I have the blue LEDs to accent my blue boat. And all of the instrument cluster works as far as lights. And yes, I know they're orange, but I got what I got. It's what came with the boat. So sure would like to have had a white or a blue of some sort. And we'll notice that my anchor light works, and my running lights up front. I have my blower and my Ailing bilge pump. Yeah, it sounds pretty good.